This is another Monday with the Wizards of Ox. How are you? This is going to be recorded again, and this time we have a great topic. We're going to be talking about recipe hacks, and to help us with this incredibly important topic, we have Monique and Carla. Hello, ladies. Good morning.
Good morning, Patricia. Yeah, this is a fun one, though. This is the part that I like when we get into the food. That's where the fun is, right?
I know, and it's just so good to have these really fabulous cooks here helping us with all of the tips and tricks. So let's just get started. And who wants to give it a shot at the beginning? You know, why tweak a recipe? Why hack a recipe? I think one of the biggest issues is that many people say, okay, what do I eat in this diet? And they have family classics and they have favorites that they eat every week, and they have all these different very emotional connections to food. And once I heard someone that I was talking to that actually said that changing your diet is harder than changing religion, because it's just such a part of what you do every day, 3 times a day. But by hacking a recipe, you know, an old favorite or whatever, and start to have more control of what your oxen intake is going to be like, it's possible to eat very varied, very rich, very delicious food every single day. So who wants to start? Carla, Monique?
Oh, I think Carla should start, because she's been kitchen inspiration for so many people for such a long time, and I still want her to start Insomniac's Kitchen. Anyway, I think Carla should start because she's got such great ideas.
Well, you know, one of the reasons, you know, that I started hacking on recipes, other than the fact that I've pretty much been tinkering with recipes all my life, you know, I learned that from, you know, my mother and my grandmothers, is it shouldn't be about deprivation. You're not going to stick with a diet if you have to completely change how you eat things. And, you know, one of the things with my son when we started was, you know, he would look and see what everybody else got to eat. And, well, why can't I have, you know, everybody has brownies. Why can't I have brownies? Well, you can't have chocolate, so let's see what the alternative is. You know, decaffeinated coffee, you know, chocolate extract, little tiny bit of cocoa powder. You know, I quickly learned that there are, you know, I could make things for him that were lower oxalate and that still, you know, allowed him to feel like he wasn't really missing out on anything.
Oh,
or
and my
missing out, not too much. Yeah, well, now it's, you know, God bless my nut powder. You know, whoever, I don't know how we first found out about that, but that's been a godsend. I mean, because, you know, I can make my kid Hershey's Kisses, or, you know, chocolate cookies, brownies that actually really look like brownies and not like, you know, baked dirt, but actually look and taste like, you know, like chocolate. And I don't have to use a whole lot. And that, you know, that's been a godsend. That's probably been my favorite. But, you know, some of our good hacks are, you know, French fries. My kid was a fry hound, still kind of is, but I mix in turnips or rutabaga. You know, if you want to go a little higher oxalate and get a similar flavor, you know, not quite the same, but jicama. You know, And I mix those in with a little bit of actual, red potato. And he's got fries. He really doesn't care that they're, not actually all potatoes. He's cool with turnips. I learned how to make tater tots, cauliflower. I do a little bit of potato, a little bit of cauliflower. He now has cauliflower tots, broccoli.
That's what I do.
Different color, but still, still gives him what he wants. So
My family really likes potato salad. And that's where red radishes came in for us. Like if you take those and boil them, they're really low in oxalate, but you get a little of that red color so that you can have completely peeled potatoes. It kind of looks like you have some unpeeled potato in there. What you've actually got is radishes, and works out really well as a cold salad.
Or
you
a
just have to
hash.
cook the radishes and cook the potatoes first, right?
Or if you're used to making like a potato hash, you can do the same with radishes. That's what we've done.
Absolutely. So I think it's really important when you're talking about recipe hacks that there's different ways to hack a recipe. And it's really how to get to that solution, which is that yummy plate on your table. And so you can actually change ingredients, like Carla was saying, we have butternut fries here, and those are favorite ones. And actually they prefer them to potatoes now. So you have, they have that little sweet in the back that it's really lovely, and with some big grain salt, it's just absolutely delicious. But you can also change combinations of foods that allow for the same thing. You could work on the texture, like Monique was saying with the radishes, it gives you that same type of texture. You can start lowering the proportions, like Carla was saying, with you can have mashed potatoes that are high with just potatoes and milk and whatever it is you put, or you can have half potatoes and half cauliflower, and you have something that looks and feels very much like mashed potatoes, but with the ease of digestion and the ease of preparation and the taste. So there's like different ways of going about this. If you have a beloved recipe, you can start looking at some of the high ingredients and just start replacing them for a little bit of lower, or start decreasing just the proportion of that high ingredient. And many times the recipe is going to be flexible enough that it's going to let you, be able to have a little bit less of that ingredient, but more of the lower ones, and still give you that taste and look and feel.
A great example that's a really simple one. In Switzerland, they have this dish called Rösti, which I grew up with, which has this beautiful potato base. And then you have a layer of spinach often, and then you have like thinly sliced cold meat, and you put like a fried egg on the top that's got a liquid yolk, and that's going to provide you the sauce for everything underneath. And it was an oxalate nightmare between the spinach and the potatoes. It was just like, oh my gosh. So I started out with, replacing the potatoes with part cauliflower, part potatoes, so that I could get some of the browning and the caramelization that the potatoes give you. And I could make this kind of base that was part of the dish. But spinach, initially I had no idea how best to go with spinach. But one of the things that we were talking about earlier among Carla, Patricia, and I before we got on board is that you can kind of stair step your way down from some of these things. So we started out with this really high oxalate spinach ingredient. So I could take like part spinach, part arugula, steam that together, and then use that for my layer. Then maybe I could come down another little bit and use 100% of something else that will really steam and wilt completely, because that's what the spinach is giving you. So I could look at something like mustard greens, or something where if you take the rib out, it's really going to give you that soft wilted green. And then you can come down the next layer to where we actually ended up, which was not steamed arugula, but steamed radish greens, both of which are actually really low. So you can kind of stair step your way down from this really high oxalate ingredient to mixing it with something so that you're starting to reduce the oxalate, but then maybe going to another green completely in this particular instance, and then landing finally at the end with a low oxalate one. And we've agreed in this family that the steamed radish greens are actually the best sub for spinach. They taste the closest to it. So interesting how over time you can adjust as well, so that it's not just, okay, this is a really high oxalate ingredient like sweet potato, so I'm just going to nosedive to 100% butternut squash. That might not be in your best interest. So you might need to do kind of a stair step hack, but knowing where your target is ultimately too.
Well, and one of the things that I did, and folks I think initially thought it was kind of weird, but I looked at supplements, because for me, the hardest thing was, you can't use cinnamon, ginger's high, cumin's high. Those were pretty much all my favorites. So, what can you do? Well, I looked at cinnamon extract. Is it quite as potent as cinnamon? No, but it still gives you a little bit of that flavor, and it can be a liquid extract that you can get in your grocery store, or if you want to use the powdered version, bulk supplements has, a cinnamon extract that's pretty low. Same with ginger, same with, well, cumin was a little bit harder, but you can use, a lower oxalate alternative. There are some low chili powders that'll give you a little bit of that, and then maybe add a tiny bit of cumin in, which is lower to lower medium oxalate, and that'll give you some of the flavor. So don't be afraid to look outside the box. Turmeric, that's insanely high, but curcumin, which is its extract, is fairly low. It still gives you a little bit of the flavor, and it gives you the color, if that's what you're looking for. So I use that in my curries. So don't be afraid to look outside the box, and think of some of these supplements can also be used as your spices.
I find that when I was starting, that's really what started to happen in my spice cabinet, was that I had these supplement bottles in there. I had like the doctor's best cinnamon extract capsules, and I had maybe Jarro's curcumin capsules. And then over time, I too swapped over to bulk ones where I could just measure it out in a teaspoon. And I sort of arbitrarily said, okay, I'm going to use kind of as much of the dry powder as I'd use of the spice. Although, have to say, if you're talking about curcumin, just be careful there, because there's therapeutic benefits and you don't want to knock your system out by using it as a flavoring. But the thing there is that I've tried like the Holy Lama spice drops, which have been tested, which are fabulous. The taste is fabulous, but I want my curry to look like curry, and that
Yep.
distinctive color that you get with the turmeric, at least you get it with the curcumin as well. And so your curry looks like curry. It doesn't just taste like it.
Well, and with bulk supplements, you don't have the additional fillers that you have, with Jarrow or,
Yes.
Doctor's Best, because,
And-
they're using a magnesium stearate or, maybe a little bit of rice bran or, as a filler. So if you do, if you go to more like a bulk supplement, you're cutting at least the filler portion out.
And that also saves you a ton of money. Like I buy most of my extracts through Pure Bulk, but there is also Bulk Supplements, which is a separate company, and there's Pure Bulk. And the nice thing there is that a lot of them have no additions at all. Although for those who want to use the cinnamon extract through Pure Bulk, it's cut with some maltodextrin. And
Yeah.
so you do have to kind of pay attention a little bit. But it's a great option in terms of dealing with flavor. I've got a couple of questions in the chat, which are good ones. So I'm gonna launch them out onto the floor here. One of them is, where do you find your turnip greens, your radish greens? I rarely find these in a grocery store, and not often possible to have fresh ones from the garden. So I agree. When it comes to radish greens, I do look for radishes which are like in a bunch and have their greens still attached. And sometimes I will see that at the grocery store, but I actually go to the farmer's market during the season, and that's where I'm more likely to get them. And interestingly enough, there's a number of places at our farmer's market where they have radishes, but they will take the greens off for you and just give you the radish and like the bulbs themselves. And so I'll sometimes go to places like that where they cut the greens away and say, do you have extra radish greens if you're not using them? So, sometimes you can actually get a bit of a deal there, because people think that those are a throwaway part. And in fact, they're a great thing to eat. But farmer's market is my best friend when it comes to this stuff. The other question I've got here is, we can get kind of dependent on some foods that are seasonal and maybe eating a lot of one particular food. The example here is rutabaga, which I can relate to, because we often have rutabaga frozen in our freezer because it's easily available that way. I think the challenge there is that we often think we eat a lot more variety than we do. So while we might be dependent on certain foods as part of a low oxalate diet, if you really talk to people about how they shop, they have kind of a standard shopping list. And if anything, I would like to encourage people to go beyond a standard shopping list and maybe even hunt around in areas of a grocery store you wouldn't normally hunt around in, or go to places like stores that call themselves ethnic stores have been my best friend. Markets that call themselves Asian markets have been my best friend. I'll often find things there that they're carrying that the regular North American grocery stores are not. So I can find chayote squash as an example all year round at an Asian market, whereas my regular supermarket won't have it. I think part of that is because people have these standard shopping lists and they buy these standard things. And many supermarkets start to cater to that standard shopping list. So sometimes it can require a bit of willingness to go into stores that we wouldn't normally look at, because we too are used to our standard kind of shopping list. And I think if we exploit as much variety as we have available in the foods that are low oxalate, honestly, that's how we started eating cooked radishes. I had planted them in our garden thinking that that would be a nice fresh addition to salads. They were low oxalate. I was excited. my kids were young. They had their first radish when one was 3 and I guess the other was 8. And they both went, "This is spicy. It's hot." And I was, uh-oh, now what? And that launched me into, okay, if I can't feed it to them raw and we've got all these radishes in our garden, what am I going to do? And then I found out that you could cook them. And then I found out all these interesting recipes. And then I found out about braised radishes. And then I found out you could use the radish greens. And so I would really encourage people to have a little curiosity about what they haven't been eating, which might be available to them. After we went low oxalate was the first time I'd ever had dandelion greens. And I went, these are not bad. Now, maybe not something that you're going to eat all the time, but certainly something you can put in the rotation if we're willing.
Absolutely. And oh, sorry, Carla.
No,
But
the only thing that I was going to add is sometimes it helps to have human guinea pigs. You know, I had, you know, my husband, not so much. He's kind of like meat and potatoes. So I would have to sneak stuff in. Ian, on the other hand, that kid was willing to try just about anything. And that also helped with buy-in, because if, you know, if he wasn't willing to eat it, again, what's the point? So one of the things that we did was I would let him pick out recipes. You know, what do you want me to convert? And he would throw some really interesting ones. And, you know, there were more than a few disasters, but after playing around with it, you know, we had quite a few successes, and it helped that he was willing to go along and experiment with me.
Getting the kids involved, getting the person who has to eat the low oxalate diet involved, I think helps with that emotional component that Patricia was talking about. We
absolutely.
need people to feel like they have some agency. So I would take my kids shopping with me.
Yep.
I'd say, oh, look, that's new. We've never had that before, and that's low oxalate. So then they would get interested in researching a recipe and interested in trying it in different forms. You know, anything we can do to you know, generate some enthusiasm as well. I remember stopping a supermarket cold one time because my kids had learned that if they came shopping with me, they got a chance to pick things. We'd talk about food. You know, they could say, oh, I want a stir fry, or I want you to try to make something like this, Mama. So similar to the kinds of things that Carla's mentioned. But we did still eat Brussels sprouts. My kids discovered Brussels sprouts were on sale. The older one could read the sign. They come running to me from the other end of the produce section saying, Mama, Brussels sprouts are on sale. Brussels sprouts are on sale. The entire store stopped dead to see whose kids actually liked Brussels sprouts. But it's amazing. You know, we would do things like shred the Brussels sprouts, shred it with cabbage, use that as part of a mix to do like a coleslaw. Mm-hmm. There's so many ways that we can make sure we don't feel deprived. We're having some of a food that we love. You know, we would oven roast Brussels sprouts, but we would oven roast them with the radishes because the radishes would take about the same amount of time. And that gave my kids a chance to have some of this food that they love, experiment more with the radishes. It dilutes the oxalate if they're not just having this high oxalate food, but they're having it with something that's really low. So there's so many tips and tricks here. Your turn, Patricia.
I think it's all about motivation. I think really, you know, just giving yourself permission to have fun and to fail, because not all recipes are good. And that's okay, you know, I think everybody has had flops, and and it happens, and you just laugh it off and you just keep going on the next one. On the shopping experience where everybody got quiet, seeing whose kids wanted, Brussels sprouts, I had this exact same thing with my kids. My little one was barely walking, and she actually said, "Oh, look, portobellos." And there was this older man next to us. I said, at her age, I had no idea what they were. Don't forget asking for them. So that was it can be fun. They can try all sorts of different things. And also there's different things, different ways of baking the same thing. So for example, if your kids love pancakes on a Saturday morning, at my house, we have banana pancakes, and that's banana and egg type of thing. And in the pan, done, pancakes. We can have chicken and rice with leftover veggies pancakes. You mix them with an egg and you put them in the pan, and they're beautiful. And they're actually better than the other ones. And you can have the regular low ox mix that you do on whatever, and with different things, and you have like a regular flour pancake, but then you can add some butternut in it, and then all of a sudden they're butternut pancakes. And then you can have some blueberries, and you put blueberry chicken pancake, and it's just just having fun, and just seeing that once you have a final product, it's really, it really works. And it's really funny that the other day, one of my younger ones was actually, she went to a pancake house or whatever and asked for powder pancakes, and she said, she was going to be, it's like, Mom, they weren't as good as yours. It's just, and it's all a matter of taming those taste buds and looking at all these different things. The other thing that's really important, if you have kiddos, if you have little ones that are going low oxalate, or you are going to low oxalate and want to have more motivation, it's the presentation. It's having fun with how you do it. It's having fun with what you present. If you present the same soup every single day, 3 times a day, after 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to be just up to there. Yeah. But our favorite birthday cake first one was a coconut cake that was, it's kind of like a fortune because you use a ton of eggs and a ton of coconut and a ton of coconut flour, lots of things. Our second favorite cake is when I used to slice a watermelon, decorated with different low oxalate fruits, and just made, like clowns' faces and, animals and all these things. And it was just fun and fresh, and people loved it. And it's just, sometimes it's the experience that you have, but you can ride in different ways. So yeah, that's another thing to do it. If you present and you create like a different, like a little animal or a little whatever, one of my favorite ones for the kids were to make guacamole. So, with avocado, a little bit of cilantro, and lime and onion. And I would make owls of guacamole, with a little beak, with the paprikas, and, a little bit, something for the eyes and whatnot. And it's just fun. And that makes a big, big, big difference. So it doesn't always have to be, okay, I want a pancake. That means I need flour. I can't have flour. I can't have a pancake. No, look at it on the other way. And my last bit, because I have, I just want to listen to them. It's sometimes you just need a solution and not the solution that everybody has. When my kids were going off on field trips and the requirement was, please provide a sandwich and please wrap it in something that we can throw away so that we don't have to worry about 30 containers. And everybody was with the sandwich, with the bread and the whatever inside and whatnot. I would send my kids with a chicken leg. Everybody thought that was the coolest thing. And bone, it was off and it was done. And they had a low oxalate food and everybody thought that was the coolest thing on earth. So sometimes it just takes, what's the need and where, how to get there.
And it doesn't have to be complicated, like Patricia's saying. One of our favorite ways to eat when my kids was little was what I called a picky plate. And a picky plate was, a little pile of low oxalate fruit, a little pile of low oxalate veggies, a rice cake, some cheese, some cold meat, maybe a condiment of some kind so they could put the meat on their rice cake with maybe a little bit of mayonnaise or some lettuce. It didn't have to be complicated, but it made a very sunny looking plate with all these nice little bunches of different things, different colors, different textures. And we would do the same thing kind of as a meal sometimes, like we have a bowl of red pepper strips. We'd have a bowl of watermelon. We'd have a bowl of, sliced cheeses of various kinds. We'd have a bowl of cold meat, maybe from a roast that I cooked. We'd have a bowl with crackers of some kind. We'd have a bowl with, a sauce or a dip, and have that on the table. And then everybody could pick from what was available for what made them happy. So it doesn't even always have to be as complicated as we make it either. My kids loved meals like that because I'd say, you can have whatever you like from what's on the table, and away they went. But I think sometimes we think we have to either, it becomes this all or nothing, and let's make it simple. I was a brain fogged, as unwell as my kids' mom, and I needed a simple way to feed them. There was no way they were going to complain if there was mango and watermelon on the table, and there was red pepper and cucumber on the table, and there was a couple of kinds of cold meat. And if I pulled it from a package in those days, I didn't worry about that either. And rice cakes and maybe corn thins and, salad dressing or mayonnaise or guacamole or something like that on the table so that they could put together what they wanted on their plate. That was, a perfectly good low oxalate meal. And oftentimes what they took to school looked like that too. And my kids, never had a lot of containers to bring home because everything would be wrapped in wax paper. It didn't need any special treatment if it was like strawberries and red pepper sticks and cheese and rice cake and whatever. It was easy and portable too.
That's what we used to do.
Or soup in a thermos. My kids love soup. For those of you who like soup, it's a great way to have a low oxalate meal, right? My kids would go to school with their little thermos and they would have like chicken soup with low oxalate vegetables in it, and they'd have a rice cake on the side, or they'd have a corn cake on the side. Simple, done, and healthy. And I never had to worry about, the fact that they didn't like it, because my kids love soup. So the other thing is, like Patricia also made mention of this, like you're starting to develop their taste buds and your own taste buds. At this point in time, there's stuff that I know I used to eat, but it's even hard for me to imagine because my taste buds are keyed completely differently now. So it's almost giving yourself enough time and allowing yourself to have enough variety and to play with your diet a bit so that you can grow into this new way of eating. It becomes just second nature. It's not a diet anymore. I'm not thinking about when I can incorporate the next high oxalate food in, because I have no interest.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree. Go ahead, Carla.
Nope, I'm good.
Oh, okay. And and so this is about kids, but actually we're all kids inside. And I think one of the really important things is that our diet is not a restriction, but a choice. I think the change in your mindset should be like some of the, somebody who becomes vegetarian because they care for animal welfare they're not complaining that they're not getting a roast. They're just getting their veggies and happy with what they have in front of them because it's a conscious decision and it's something that reflects who they are. And in that sense, I think the choice of a low oxalate diet, which is a diet that is going to support all of these health issues that we might or might not have, and it's going to allow us to have fuel and energy and all these wonderful things, and really understanding what, what's the correct fuel for my body. It's then all of a sudden, all these other really high oxalate foods stop being interesting. I used to be a chump for spinach. And, I would eat all these huge salads every day. And I never did the smoothie thing, but oh my gosh, I would put spinach everywhere. Tomato sauce, I would put spinach in it, and anything, it would go in. And now I don't even consider it food. It's just not a food. So and I'm not feeling particularly bad because I'm not eating it. It's not something that I miss, and it's not something that I think I will ever be looking forward to eating again.
And that's a really good point, because the thing about some of these foods is that, like, they're hardly food anymore. Like, if we really think about the trade-off between the amount of nutrient versus the amount of toxin and what's really bioavailable to you, something like spinach is really hardly food anymore, right? And so for me, it definitely became less about deprivation and more about not just fuel, but structure. If I'm ingesting something that's a toxin, and I'm doing that every day, and the body I'm going to live in next week, next month, next year is being built or not built with this, what does that mean for me? And, honestly, that's an important question and a context question. Doesn't take away the fact that you can have fun with your diet within those guardrails, if you will, to kind of keep you up from going off the road. It's important for us to think about, though, because what you eat is building the body that you'll live in. Fuel in some ways is almost simpler, because then you're going to burn it, quote unquote, and then it's going to disappear. The food you eat doesn't disappear, it turns up here.
Yep.
And that's a really important aspect that we need to keep in mind. So enjoy, have fun, have play. We're able to hack our recipes. We're able to swap out a bad ingredient for another. But we also want to think about what we're building over the long haul. So, from my standpoint, at this point in my life, it's more about, I want this to be as healthy as possible, and really, really important. We've got another question.
Yeah.
It says, can you address eating in social situations? I find it very challenging visiting relatives and friends' homes, and also European friends. Friendships and relationships are intricately linked to sharing meals together, and this is in many cultures as well. It's harder to socialize for sure, especially if I'm not in my own home. This is a big one. Who wants to jump in?
I can get started because I just lived that. I think you probably saw I was out of the group for a number of years because I was pursuing all different things, and I came back in pain. I came back in pain, and I came back brain fogged and whatever. And I said, oh my God, I just spent 3 days in Amsterdam. I thought I was going to be in the city of Amsterdam. I was not. I was out in the boondocks in the middle of a golf course somewhere outside of Amsterdam. There was nowhere to find food anywhere. And my host turned out to be a spinach buff. that fed me breakfast, lunch, and dinner spinach. And I was just, and at the beginning I said, it's been so long, it's not going to hurt me, it's on my mind, I have enough, background, been doing this for so long, it's not going to be an issue. Oh boy, it was. So I started having pain and brain fog and all these things. So what do you do in those cases? Normally when information is key, and people, maybe they don't necessarily understand the concept of low oxalate, but most people understand the concept of either intolerances or allergies. And everybody who knows me knows I don't eat spinach, and knows I don't eat nuts. So it's just one of those things that you just start talking about it. And if you're invited to a restaurant, for example, I usually do, in those cases, I usually do meat, it's usually easier. And I try to, to see if they have like a guacamole. I love that because it's really easy for them to whip up and do something like that. Soups are sometimes good options. And if you're actually invited to someone's house, most of the time what I do is that I eat before I go to the dinner invitation. So I am not starving. I am not hungry. So if I don't see anything that I can eat, then I can say, well, I had a late lunch meeting and I'm full, but I'm going to be here and I'm going to enjoy your company, and I'll just have a glass of wine with you. And that's how I've been solving it recently. And it just puts a lot of pressure off that, and a lot of anguish off. Your needs have been met. You've eaten, that's it. And then you show up ready to socialize and not worry about what's on your plate.
And the good news is wine is low oxalate, and many other social adult beverages would be low oxalate. If I could add, if I'm going to a family event, because I have found my own family particularly resistant to this idea that somehow Monique needs to have a special menu. I always bring food that I know I can eat. So I will suggest potlucks or other kinds of approaches where I can bring a dish. No one else is going to be able to look at it and tell that it's low oxalate, but it is. I know it is. So a great example, we actually ate this last night. I'll do like a Greek salad, but I'll take the tomato down a bit. I'll swap out some of the green pepper for red pepper. It looks like a Greek salad. It tastes like a Greek salad, and it just doesn't have as much tomato in it because that's a higher oxalate ingredient. And I've got a salad that I can eat then. And if I also bring something, I have been known to tuck away a grilled chicken breast in the package that's got Monique's famous Greek salad in it or whatever. And then if it turns out that they're having something like a meatloaf and it's got a sauce and I have no idea what's in it and I don't want to mess with it, then I can just, have my Greek salad and have my chicken breast. But I also like the idea of I've eaten late. I'm not really needing a meal right now, but I would love to sit and socialize with you and be able to spend time with you. And how about I sit and have a glass of wine while we chat while you guys have your meal. I've got an add-on to our question. Traveling to visit relatives or friends, staying at hotels. Yeah. It's a tough one. It's always going to be a bit of a tough one because explaining oxalate can be a handful. Carla, your turn.
We were pretty familiar with that because we travel usually every year to visit relatives, and for Ian, it wasn't just being low oxalate, it was being gluten and casein free, for a long time. And, initially, eating on the road, there just weren't a lot of gluten-free options. So, we always had a cooler with cold cuts, low oxalate fruit and vegetables, maybe some low oxalate gluten-free bread, and diet cheese. He was big on that for a while before he could finally get tolerate dairy again. We always got hotels that had a kitchen. Once we got to our destination, and then if I didn't have, if I couldn't find a place that had gluten-free options, I would end up bringing, a box of, gluten-free flour that was low oxalate, some of my blends. And I would bring, what stuff I knew that we weren't going to be able to find. I'd make pancakes and put them in a freezer bag, and we would have a little carry-on with ice packs, and I would just transfer that stuff. So, you pack your own, at family get-togethers. We were really lucky that, in-laws on both sides, would always ask, because they knew that Ian was on a restricted diet. So they would say, what things can he have? What things can't he have? And I always tried to keep it fairly minimal, just no gluten, no dairy, he can have, most fruits, no blackberries, stuff like that. And they always tried to accommodate. If they couldn't, I would just do, like Monique said, I'd always bring something that we could have.
Yeah.
And restaurants, salads, man, we were big on salads.
Grilled meat and salad. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a restaurant and had grilled meat and salad.
Yeah, and a lot of them, some of them have the mixed greens, but some of them are just, iceberg lettuce with a little bit of shredded carrot and a little bit of shredded, like a mix of salad and broccoli slaw. And have that. And usually if they could grill it, most of the places that we went to, we could have, grilled salmon, grilled chicken, maybe a steak, maybe a burger. And a lot of them had options of, you can have it deep fried, or, we can put a spice blend on it that's, that's lower oxalate, gluten-free, or, just really, minimal salt and pepper. You could just tell them, yeah, I don't really want the blackened spices because I'm not entirely sure what's in it. And so there were some good options.
Yeah. And I think preparing ahead makes a really, really big difference. And we used to travel a lot. I'm Mexican, but I live in Belgium. So every time we had to go to Mexico for whatever, Christmas or whatnot, that involved 24 hours on planes and airports. And I would just take my little cooler carry-on, and I would have, the paprika sticks and the cucumber sticks and all these things, and the lemons that I would put, and and the spices and the cold cuts and all those things. And that would be our basis. And then if they could eat something from what was given on the plane, well, so much power to us. But if not, it was not an issue because they already had, enough to eat. Another thing that really helps is if you propose helping, if you're in, like we used to go to Mexico, I used to stay at my sister's or my cousin's, and then we had to go, and visit all the family everywhere. And then I would usually go shopping at some point, go to the supermarket, buy some staples, and then show them how to cook them. And either take the staples to where we were eating and then prepare something, or just talk to them in advance and I say, oh, what are you preparing? And either I would prepare something that was equivalent. So if there was going to be like pasta, I would put something, that would look similar. And especially for my kid, and then later on for me as well. Or we would go before and cook for everybody in the way that we could eat. So that was another thing that we did.
We also travel a lot on planes because my husband's Dutch. And so we've done the trek from Toronto to Amsterdam airport many times. And we would travel, and I didn't even use cooler packs. I don't think this is dangerous, but I'm not also going to advocate for it. But we would just take red pepper in tinfoil, cucumber in tinfoil. I would do chicken strips in a pan, sort of not too long before we left. I would cool them. I would put them in tinfoil, and I had this big mum purse, and all that stuff would go with us when we went to travel. We would have a cooler if we were in the car. Yeah, I think it's the Boy Scouts motto: be prepared on this one. Call the restaurants in advance potentially and see, what can you do for me? And then I guess consider making sure you have a calcium magnesium or something like that with you in case you get too much oxalate, because you can take something like that with the meal to help to bind some of the oxalate that might be present. And then for some of the other issues like intolerances and that, I guess we have to be prepared to ride the wave if we end up having a problem because we've gotten something we didn't expect. All you can do is the best you can do in any of these moments, unfortunately.
Well, and a lot of menus are online now too. So that, I mean, we look at online menus constantly when we're going out, because they have, now more so you're seeing a lot more gluten-free options. So, don't be afraid to look at that. And again, like you said, ask if they do substitutions. A lot of the times they will.
Yeah. Well, ladies, I think it was a great discussion as usual. So we will be posting this as part of our channel, The Wizards of Ox, on YouTube. We're going to be posting at the end of the invitation, the link to this video as soon as we put it up. And let's talk next week about something else more ox. I don't know if do you have a proposal maybe of what we could be talking about next week?
Yeah, anybody have curiosities that they would like to see us handle?
Recipes for kids, or recipes for I don't know, special textures, crunchy recipes, or whatever. No? Well, we'll talk about among ourselves, and we'll see how those how the questions turn up. So remember that you can send us an email at lowoxproject@gmail.com, or you could send us in the group private message, either to Monique, to Carla, or to myself. So until then, we'll see you next week for more adventures with the Wizards of Ox.